Hi again. A little while ago I had talked about my thinking that the logic behind the diagnosis and particularly the surgical intervention for something referred to as carpal tunnel was probably a bit off, if you like. And this week I came across an interesting paper that examined the recovery rates post of carpal tunnel. This was with surgery and without surgery. I'll put the link below, but it came up with an interesting statement in there. So first of all, let's have a quick look at carpal tunnel and sort of work out, decide what the diagnosis is. And so I have a wrist and a forearm handily lying around. And so we have the radius and we have the ulnar and we have the nerves of the forearm going through this area. And the nerves involved are coming from the brachial plexus. The brachial plexus is got its roots up in the neck, going from C1, and it branches out various sort of roots, trunks, divisions, branches, and it becomes the sort of three main nerves of the forearm: the radial nerve, the ulnar nerve, and the median nerve. The median nerve, as you might guess, is in the middle. So carpal tunnel is the condition that is characterized by numbness, tingling in the fingers. Now this isn't necessarily with something which is nerve damage as such. There isn't a blockage actually or compression on the nerve in relation to the nerve being compressed. And when you get that, what you'll get is something akin to a condition that some of the miners had, coal miners had a few years ago, called white finger syndrome, where the nerves were literally shaken to death, and they had been working for too long with vibrational machinery, and it's a pretty horrible condition. So we won't talk about the treatment they got as a result, but that's which was pretty appalling. But never mind. So the carpal tunnel in this instance is the pressure on the median nerve of the flexor retinaculum, from the flexor retinaculum. So the flexor retinaculum is this bit of, it's really narrow. It's quite a lot more narrow than you would imagine between this space, and the flexor retinaculum is the binding pieces of tissue, the connective tissues which hold things in place. Now, we have these retinacula all over the place. So we have the retinacula around the ankle, and they're essentially thickened pieces of fascia, really, that sort of sit across the top of joints, and they hold things in place. Now the thing about the flexors is that they're not just sitting across the top of these structures, but they are actually wrapping around. So if you imagine you've got the ceiling and then you've got a little loop suspended underneath it, and you've got these structures running through it. And so the space that we're talking about is very, very small, and the capacity for things to get stuck moving in and out of that space is there. And of course, like putting your foot on a hose pipe, you're going to end up with a reduction in information that's running through that. There's a couple of things to consider. Firstly, if we have limited movement at its origin or restriction at the origin, then it stands to reason that the potential for there to be some kind of symptomatic presence down in the wrists or the forearms would also be there. So it's a real key point for me to make sure that anybody that's presenting with any kind of forearm stuff is going to have rotation, lateral flexion, and full range of movement through the neck and head. And if they haven't, then that's a starting point. There's no point looking at the end of the hose and the nozzle if the water is compressed or not coming through from the end. It's the old Laurel and Hardy routine of putting the foot on the hose and somebody examine the nozzle and they taking their foot off and getting squirted. Never grows old. It's a bit of slapstick comedy. So the surgical intervention will be to release literally release this pressure with surgery. So it's a fairly straightforward and quick procedure, and it's been done relatively a lot over the years. There's a couple of problems with it. Firstly is that, as with any surgical intervention, you just don't know how much scarring is going to come about. Now, I think I've talked about scarring elsewhere in terms of information. If I haven't, then let me know and I'll do more on it, because it's a really interesting process and a mechanism by which we repair. But of course, we can't change the scar. We can't stop the scar. We can't prevent the scar from build up, and we can't release the scar when it's there. It's there, and we don't know how long that scarring process is going to take, or how much there's going to be. There's just things we don't know. We don't know the mechanism of these, when these things get switched on and switched off. It's just not something that's not known. So scarring is an issue, and if we ended up with a small amount more scarring or more pressure on that than there was before, then of course we end up retrograde, we end up sort of further back than where we started. But I think I noticed in this paper was that it mentioned that the prompt recovery of the issues in the hand after carpal ligament release was demonstrated in this study. It suggested that it may indicate ischemic blockade of the nerve in the carpal tunnel rather than demyelination and axonal loss. So that they are suggesting, therefore, that there isn't any damage that's caused by this issue, and the ischemic loss, which is loss of blood supply to the body part, a reduction in body part, which kind of backs up what I was saying about potential blood supply from other areas that are further away from this area might be responsible. So what does that mean? What that means is that when they're testing, what they found was that the recovery rates in relation to the nerve were such that there was instant return of blood supply to the area, which suggested that probably it wasn't to do with the actual ligament itself necessarily, but to do with other aspects. And there's lots and lots of reasons why one might have reduced blood supply. That could well be through different tensions in the forearm, it could be through pressures in the hand, it could be through loads and loads of different reasonings that you have a reduction in blood supply. It could even be from a brain response. The brain could be saying, we're going to send less blood to this area, or increase inflammation in a certain area. So really clear to point out that it's not necessarily the surgery that has increased that. Now we know that surgery for some people will make them feel better, so we give them the surgery and they feel better. And it begs the question, is all surgery always necessary? Now that doesn't mean the same question is, do surgeons believe that the surgery is necessary? Because I think they probably always do, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say it always is. And so therefore increasing potential for blood supply through these areas by working on the elbows, by increasing ranges of movement, by increasing the neck and head are as likely, certainly as far as this study is concerned, to improve or create resolution from carpal tunnel syndrome as surgery is, from what we can look in the paper. There were some people that had spontaneous relief, some people that didn't have the surgery, some people that did have the surgery, and this paper looked at all those groups. Overall, they think the surgery is a good thing. Whether it's the surgery that's doing the job or whether it's the process of the surgery that's doing the job is a more complicated question, but ultimately it's probably not the actual release of the ligament that we're looking at here. So from there on in, the question would be, is carpal tunnel a thing? It's certainly a set of symptoms, and it's certainly something that we should and could look at and take on board, but as a diagnosed syndrome that needs surgery, I don't think so. But hey, what do you think? So please let me know, join in the conversation, have a comment, leave a comment below, please share it, let people know what's going on, what I'm saying. If it outrages people, then that's great as well, we want all that. So please do all those things you're supposed to do on social media, and come back next time, we'll talk about something completely different. All suggestions welcome, see you next time, bye for now.